All right, good morning. Anyone else cold? Chilly this morning. I like it. Today was pajama day for my kids, and they were like, I'm wearing my warm pajamas. Like, that's perfect, right? I want to wear my pajamas to school. Maybe on Halloween, right? I could wear pajamas. That's kind of unexciting, though. Halloween's only 6 days away. Can you believe that? I was at the store yesterday, and the girl at Starbucks was unpacking red cups. She's like, they come out next week. And I'm like, I don't want to look at them, not till next week. Like, I refuse to eat anything peppermint until November 1st. November 1st and beyond, I'm all in, but not until then, right? Like, I walked into Lowe's and I'm like, don't look at all the Halloween stuff. I mean, Christmas stuff. It's everywhere. It's obnoxious. I'm not ready. Not till next week. Next week, let's go. But not till Tuesday. Anyway, I hope you're all doing okay, hanging in there. We have a couple of things going on this week, so I wrote them up here just to remind you. Don't forget that second part of the paper is due by 11:59 p.m. tonight. A lot of you have already turned it in, but if you haven't, you're turning it in on Canvas. It's worth 40 points. And remember that the source is worth 10 points of that. So don't forget that academic source. That's the first thing I'm going to check for when I open your paper. Yeah.
So let's make sure we only need one, right?
Yeah. So on the final paper, you'll have your academic source and your show. And you're welcome to have more than that, but you only need one. So let's say you really want to use something that's not academic. That's totally fine as long as you also have an academic source. So the DSM, again, is a great one. But yeah, you only need one.
So you don't need like offers.
No, so just make sure all the information is there. It doesn't need to be in any kind of format. Just make sure that you have, the year, the publisher, the title, the author, all that kind of stuff. But the specific format doesn't matter till the final paper. Okay. And then the other 30 points are the 2 to 3 pages worth of progress. Again, remember, it can be bulleted. I'm just looking to see that you're making some progress on your paper. Are there any other questions about the paper for now, like formatting, anything else related to it? Yeah. The one source in the final paper, it should be on your references page. You should have the show and the source that you've used. If you don't have it on there now, that's totally fine, but it should be on the final paper. And we'll talk about that more. I'll talk about what kind of formatting stuff I'm looking for. I'll show you that resource again from the Library and Writing Center. So don't worry about that yet, but yes, it will need to be on that final paper. Yeah. Yeah, so make sure that, and you should have had that information from the first part where I made you find it, the first part of the paper. But at some point, gather that you will need it for the final paper. Sure. Anything else about the second part? And then the exam, right? So exam number 2 is on Thursday. So remember, you aren't taking them in person, just like the first exam. I'm letting you take it with your notes and your book and everything on Canvas. Really should do quite well on that because you can use your notes in your book. And there's a study guide on Canvas, so you know exactly what to prepare and study. So just like last time, it'll open up Thursday morning at 12:01 a.m. and then it'll close at 11:59 p.m. So you could take the time that we have from 8:30 to 9:45, so you don't have to dent your day at all in any way, but you could take this time and take it, or you could take it later, but it will open that morning and close that night. So just make sure at some point on Thursday, you do take exam number 2, set yourself up for success. Don't wait till 11 at night to take it, right? Try and take it a little earlier if you can. Prepare and study, have the study guide out and done in front of you. Again, you should do really, really well. It's very straightforward and clear if you've been reading and paying attention and studying and so on. Okay, same format, same style, everything is the first exam. Some short answer questions, and then a lot of multiple choice and a handful of true false. 100 points. Anything else about either of those at all? All right, we have a couple of slides left with eating disorders. We got halfway through this one. If I remember correctly, we talked about the first 2, but not the last 2, if that seems right. So a couple of nods. Okay, perfect. So a couple of more slides here, and then we'll move into chapter 10, which is actually quite brief. as well. There's only kind of two main disorders in there. So we talk about psychological and interpersonal factors, and Addison, still harping on Addison. But biological factors and cultural ones also play a role. So it can't be purely due to biology, because we're talking about mental illnesses and mental disorders, but it can play a role. There are some people who just don't get the signals in the same way when it comes to being full or being hungry, right? Some kind of deficiency maybe in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, I have an image of it here, little structure in the brain, right, that's in charge of sending signals related to hunger and being full. And so it's thought that maybe this could be somewhat genetic, or it could be something related to a deficiency in the hypothalamus where it's not sending and receiving messages in kind of a proper way. And so people aren't getting those cues of hunger and fullness, which might play a little bit of a role in this disorder. I think this one is probably one of the bigger ones as well, right? So some of the interpersonal, cultural, and then psychological ones obviously play a role, but cultural factors are huge. Our culture has very, very narrow definitions of beauty, right? And they're different typically for men and for women, not always, but they're definitely a little bit different. Women, the definition of beauty, stereotypically in our culture, is thinness, right? And so being thin, equating to beauty, puts a lot of pressure on women to feel like they have to be thin in order to be attractive. And for men, the stereotypical ideal of like attractiveness is being muscular and larger, right? And so these norms that we have and that we portray in the media seep into people's minds, and they kind of can make you feel like you aren't like everyone else. How come I don't see anyone like me in the media? No one looks like me. Everyone else is bigger than me, right? And I think most of us know consciously that the people that you see in magazines and on billboards, they don't actually look like that in real life, right? Like that is like the best version of them. And then often the best version that has then been digitally manipulated on top of it. But we don't always think of that when we're seeing these images. When we're being bombarded by them, it can make us feel very othered, where I don't look like that. And that pressure and that depression that can come from that, and just feeling very kind of left out of that attractive norm. We also have a lot of norms that value physical appearance over everything else, right? Physical beauty is something that is very heavily valued in our culture. And I don't think that helps either. How many of you have seen the Dove Evolution ad? It's kind of old at this point. It's probably newer versions of it, but the Dove Evolution. No? Oh, I'm going to play it for you. As I said, I think most of us consciously know that ads and pictures are manipulated, but this is such a nice, quick example of what that looks like. So I'll play it for you. They have someone who comes at this point, but you can see, right, how different she looks from when she comes into that image that you see on the billboard. They make her lips bigger, her eyes bigger, her neck longer, right? Remove any imperfections that are possibly there. The images that we see in the media are often not real people by the time that we see them. If you've ever seen someone who's like famous in real life, they often look very different than we see them in the media. Forever ago at this point, I worked at Starbucks in the Valley, and when I was going through college, and I remember we'd have people come in all the time who were like famous. I would never recognize them. People were really good at this, not me. I'd be like, they don't look anything like them. Like, I think it was Jennifer Aniston came in once, and like, I didn't recognize her at all. Like, she looked nothing like the person you would see in the media or in like an advertisement of some sort, because they're so done up and digitally manipulated. And it creates this artificial idea of beauty, right? That again can cause people to feel pretty badly about themselves when they don't match up to it. Yeah.
So like not specific thing, but like actors like Tom Cruise, like in real life he's pretty short.
Yeah.
He has like this, like most of the time stars, like they have to be shorter than him. So that he like looks taller than things. So like when you see him in real life, Tom Cruise is, but then media, people portray it as like
that's so funny, right? If you want to be in the show with me, you have to be shorter than me, so I feel tall, right? Yeah, but that's a thing. I mean, it really isn't. With his level of like fame that he has, he can control that for sure. But yeah, I mean, just manipulating the perception, right? And that's something that is very, very common in the media. So again, the more of these things that you have going on, the more vulnerable or likely you might be to develop an eating disorder. But it's a combination of factors. It's a multi-dimensional risk perspective. When we're treating anorexia and bulimia, there tend to be a few goals. They're a little bit different for each one, just because the disorders are a little different. But the goals of anorexia there are three of them. The first one is to get somebody back to a healthy weight. Now, this is ridiculously difficult to do. I mean, somebody by nature of the disorder has refused to be at a healthy weight, right? That's kind of the essence of the disorder. So this can sometimes be a little bit forceful and might require hospitalization, force feeding, tubes to make sure that they're getting like food and nutrients into their body. But you're trying to eliminate the danger of being very underweight because that plays a big role in your health, right? So forcing someone or very, kind of coaxing someone in a forceful way to get them back to a healthy weight where they're no longer doing damage. Not uncommon for people to be hospitalized or go to like a treatment facility center, like you saw in that documentary clip I showed you. Then you have to treat the issues related to the eating disorder. What's causing it? Where's it coming from? If it's coming from a lack of control, let's go back and talk about what happened and work through it. If it's coming from depression, we treat the depression, or anxiety, treat the anxiety. So treat underlying issues in order to help the eating disorder get better. And then finally, reducing or eliminating behaviors and thoughts that might lead to relapse. Relapse rates with anorexia and bulimia are so high, especially when people become stressed out or they're under high levels of stress. They tend to relapse quite a bit, right? And it's just because it's something that's so ongoing, right? Food is something that we need in order to survive. So people get that complicated relationship we talked about last time. So trying to identify, are there certain people that are triggers? Is it a group of friends? Is it a partner? Is it your family? What are the people that might cause you to relapse? And how can we reduce or eliminate that, as much as possible? Not uncommon for people to go to group therapy. These disorders are very commonly treated through group therapy, or maybe even considering medication, depending on the underlying issues that might be going on. With bulimia, because it's a cycle, very much like OCD, it's almost like an exposure response prevention kind of thing. So what we're trying to do here is break the binge purge pattern. So somebody binges and then we don't let them purge. And that causes an incredible amount of anxiety and grief, but you have to break the cycle. You're trying to teach better, more healthy eating habits. So rather than binging and purging, how do we get you to be able to get some control and stop when you're in a binge and then not compensate in such an unhealthy way? A lot of therapy, this one tends to be a little bit harder to treat, right? So oftentimes individual or group therapy or behavioral therapy, right? That exposure and response prevention we talked about with OCD would be a behavioral therapy, exposing you to food and eating it, but then not letting you compensate in any way. Medications, treating that underlying condition. And again, a lot of relapse, like 40% of the time, this can be really helpful. But a lot of people do relapse, unfortunately, just because of the nature of that relationship with food. So these can take some time. It can be an ongoing thing. And again, a lot of us have maybe problematic patterns with food, but they're not necessarily disordered, right? So it might be something to keep an eye on, kind of like with those guys we watch, the competitive eaters, right? It might be a red flag, but not yet. It's not necessarily a disorder. So a lot of issues related to relapse that we have to try and minimize as much as possible. Anyone, any comments or stories? Anyone know people who have gone through like treatment for either of these? Any comments or stories or thoughts or anything at all? Yeah,
Actually,
sure.
we were talking about the like the hospitalist told me, right?
Yeah.
Like see themselves in the incident. Should they literally see like their body?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're just in your mind, you're much larger than you actually would be. So the best example I can think of is from that little, did you see were you here last time, right? With the thin promo, how she draws a picture of herself. And so like she trains herself and like, if this was her, oh my gosh, like there's her head. I mean, whatever, right? All right, and then they actually trace her and she's like here, right? That tiny head. right? And so seeing herself as just so much bigger than reality. And so it's not that you maybe actually see yourself physically different, just in your mind, you view yourself differently than you maybe are in reality. So there's like an actual size difference in the way that you perceive yourself versus how you maybe actually are perceived. Let's erase this. It looks like one of those things that you would use for like target practice. Right? Any other thoughts or questions or comments or anything? Stories? Yeah, sure.
For yourself to be bigger, make the opposite. Smaller.
Sure. Yeah, and it could go in either direction. It could be one part of the body with body dysmorphic disorder. Often it's one part of that disorder. Like, so people will think that their nose is grotesque, right? Like it's too large or disfigured in some way. And so they have multiple procedures to try and correct it. The one distinguishing feature, so between something like this and body dysmorphic disorder, body dysmorphia cannot only be due to weight. So if it's only around your weight and your body size, then it would probably fit more here. So that is the one kind of like caveat, if you will. It cannot solely be due to weight. It could be body in general, but if it's only weight, then it probably fits more here. Last thing, just kind of some suggestions, books and documentaries. I put these in here. There's some really easy, like light reads, but they're great, like personal accounts of people who struggled with eating disorders. And then some great documentaries. The one I showed you was Thin to the Bones, probably the most recent one. It was on Netflix. Not sure if it still is anymore, but it definitely was on there. But there's a bunch of documentaries about this, a lot of things that have been made and produced. So just to kind of put those out there, if you wanted to know more, or do some reading or watch something on it, here are a couple of kind of pop culture suggestions for further learning. All right. Anything else? Any other stories, comments, questions, thoughts, anything? Yeah.
If you look at me inside, you can like, oh, maybe. And I remember in middle school, like, obviously the perfect body or whatever for guys, you know. And so like I was like, I think I was like 50 or something like that. And like I worried about so many people like, oh, you stupid like that and stuff like that. And like that like messed me up. But also like I was like, yeah, I'd rather be like, I don't know, I'd rather be like I really think like it's probably harder to this way. So like that was the extent, but like it was really difficult.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people are just naturally thin, right? Like their frame is smaller. Maybe they have high metabolism. They process food in like a way that keeps them very like thin. And there can be a lot of hatred and like shaming for that as well, right? That automatic assumption of like, maybe you have an eating disorder, or you're forcing yourself to be this way when maybe you can't help it. That's just how your body is, right? We all have different body types, right? Like no matter how hard I try, I will never be a stick, right? Like it will never happen. Like I would have to give up food, and I love food way too much to ever consider it, you know. And there are people who are so thin who no matter how hard they try to gain weight can't, right? And so there's so much body shaming and hatred and like hating on people for stuff like that. And there's only so much we can control us. So much of our weight is genetic and biological. Yeah.
I'm just gonna that
Yeah.
because I get that like almost like at least every single time I see a family member or something.
Sure.
You never eat or something, or why don't you have a burger? Like I eat a burger every single day. I work at a place that sells food, so they're freaking in and out. You know, like I too. You know, it's not my fault, but it actually does look pretty. I don't know. It feels shameful.
Yeah.
For a certain point, you know, like
Yeah, right. I am eating burgers. Literally, I am eating burgers. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate, you know, because I mean, again, some people are just naturally thin, some people are naturally overweight, and you have to work quite hard to beat that body type, right? Yeah, we all have what are called set points. They're automatically wired in. Your body is naturally designed to maintain these points of weight that like, are ideal for your system. Right. And so if you've ever tried to lose weight or gain weight, your body fights you. which is frustrating if you want to lose weight or gain weight. Right, and so if you're trying to lose weight, for example, you might lose like 3 or 4 pounds, and then your body's like, oh, wait, something's wrong. I'm going to make you hungrier and slow your metabolism down so that you don't lose anymore. Right. Or if you're trying to gain weight, I'm going to speed up your metabolism and reduce your hunger so you stop gaining. Right. Your body is naturally predisposed to keep you within a range. Most of us will go back and forth 5 to 10 pounds our entire life. Right. Like for me, I always gain like 5 to 10 pounds in the fall, and then I lose it in the spring, and then I gain it back. Like it's like the holidays, I go up, the spring I go down. Right. Like it's just the same, like 5 to 10 pounds every year. Our bodies are just very designed to keep us where we're at. And it's unfortunate that people tend to judge that so much, right? There was did you have a thought?
It's like, in those, it was in those schools, so like, probably was skating and move on the stick all on.
Yeah.
And then I went out speeding with him one time, and we actually ate a lot. It was like, it was like, yeah, I eat a lot.
Yeah, I eat a lot, but this is my weight, right? And again, it's just unfortunate. We all are who we are. Our bodies are what they are. And the key is that you're happy with your body, right? Who cares what other people think? You know, like, I mean, ideally, that's how we would feel, right? But it's unfortunate. There's a lot of that on both sides, right? Whether it's being overweight or underweight, there's a lot of kind of judgment and assumptions that can come with that, for sure. All right. So we'll switch gears to the other. We have one more chapter before we take our exam on Thursday. And again, there's really only 2 disorders in this chapter. And I'm not going to talk about the different types of substances. It's kind of beyond the realm of this class. But if you're interested in the different types of drugs and how they affect our mind and our body, you could consider taking like a neuropsych class that we have here. Anyone taken neuropsych here yet? Have to take it one day. It's a tough class, right? Not to scare you, but it's a tougher class. It's probably one of the harder ones at this level, but it's super interesting. Lots of different substances. They all affect our body in different ways. And so I'm not really going to go into the substances. What we're going to focus on are the disorders, right? Which there are basically 2. So drugs, psychoactive drugs, are any kind of chemical substance that's going to change your mood and your perception. Now, this is an absolutely massive amount of substances. This is everything from like Tylenol and cough syrup to heroin and LSD, marijuana, right? I mean, alcohol, right? The list goes on and on. This is stuff that is legal and prescribed to illegal and purchased. There's so many different substances. And most people can use a substance every now and then and be okay, right? Drink a cup of coffee and maybe not develop a problematic pattern with it. Maybe you're able to like use marijuana in some capacity and not become addicted to it, or smoke cigarettes and not become addicted to them. But there are a lot of people that do struggle with addiction. And that is the kind of the main disorder that we'll talk about here. And really in every culture throughout time, people have sought ways to alter their consciousness. This is a very, very popular pursuit. And we have documented history of this, like all the way back as far as we have recorded history of people using substances as part of a spiritual journey or as part of a celebration of the gods or like a celebration of like a banquet of some sort. You know, this is something that we have a lot of documentation on. And drugs can cause kind of a temporary change, or it can be something that's more of a long-term problematic pattern. And that's what we're a little more focused on in this chapter, are those long-term problematic patterns and relationships that people can develop with a substance. Yeah.
I'm gonna say, like my favorite series, is the Name Theory. And it basically goes like our early ancestors like were eating like foods and some of them had psychedelic effects, and that promoted like hospitality and like and stuff like that, which like created like a stronger community, and then led to like them getting more food and all these things. And that's the reason why we're like where we are today. Like there's a potential that drugs are the reason why we're like apex predators in mind.
Right. We owe our gratitude to the mushrooms, right? Right, yeah, I mean, I've read that as well, right? There's a lot of theories, and that's definitely one of them. And it is kind of a funny thought to think that, psychedelic mushrooms have helped us to be where we are today. And there's a lot of like, I think it was my other classic, I'm trying to think back if it was this one or the other one, where we're talking about like the use of like psychedelics in therapy and things like that. I can't remember which one it was. But this is that's an interesting current trend too. There's a lot of like, talking about using psychedelic medications to help people with different psychological disorders. It's kind of an interesting newer trend. A lot of dangers to it, but it's something that is growing in popularity for all sorts of different kinds of things, like trauma treatment is a very common one, along with others. Yeah.
That recently hit hospice treatments with psychedelics in order to help prepare those people to accept their ultimate mass.
Sure.
Which I think is a nice use of it. And from what I've read, it's appeared to be doing.
Yeah. And that's one, right? And then another one is to help people process trauma. So people who experience who have PTSD, going off to retreats and ingesting these different like psychedelic ingredients that are supposed to help them to work through traumatic events in a different way. It's being used in couples counseling to help couples but then it can create issues with addiction at the same time. But it's really interesting. It's a growing trend in a lot of different uses like that, along with some of the ones that I just mentioned. It's very popular right now and controversial, very dangerous and controversial. Yeah. Yeah.
This almost like, you really would do that. I like those one
Mhm.
just was like put them on the test, like everything and stuff. I was like,
Like it's no big deal, right? Yeah, and that whole like microdosing is a big thing right now. And it's super it's being portrayed as very like casual and not harmful, but it can be incredibly dangerous and harmful. But it's very popular, that idea of like microdosing to help people like process things in a different way. Yeah, like no big deal. Just put it on the toast, keep going with the day, right? Like I'll record the whole thing. And people can have very dangerous reactions to like any kind of mind manifesting drug. It can cause all kinds of problems, but it is becoming very popular. Again, I'm not going to go into these, but I just wanted to share. I put them in the slides in case you wanted just a little bit. There are generally 3 categories of drugs that we tend to talk about. Depressants, which are any kind of medication or chemical or drug that's going to slow you down. Okay, so things that depress or slow down your system, things like alcohol, the sedative hypnotic drugs like the barbiturates and benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium, opioids like morphine, heroin, and the endorphins. These are all things that tend to play a role in like killing pain and also slowing you down, calming you down. So this is one group of drugs that people might, have a problematic relationship with. Stimulants are drugs that speed you up, right? So they activate the sympathetic nervous system. They create feelings of energy and optimism, cause people to not sleep very much. They suppress appetite. Cocaine, the amphetamines, ecstasy or MDMA, nicotine, caffeine, very, very, very common. Vaping could also fall in here, kind of down with the nicotine related drugs. But these are things that speed you up, right? And they oftentimes have a very intense crash that come with them. You're very up, and then you kind of fall through the floor and bottom out afterward. And so they become very addictive because people want to avoid the crash that comes with stopping taking them. The hallucinogens are like the psychedelic drugs, things that cause you to see and hear things that aren't there, or feel things that aren't actually grounded in reality. Things like LSD and marijuana, 2 very, very common ones. Marijuana is an interesting drug in that it fits in a couple of different spots, but we tend to put it here most of all. It can have kind of stimulating properties or depressant properties, but we tend to put it here because it can kind of change the way that people perceive time and space, depending on the type of it that you're using. But a lot of different substances. Again, there are tons, and everybody reacts different to every substance. Something as mild as coffee, right? Coffee, and several of you have coffee or some kind of like warm drink. I don't know what's in your cups, right? But I see coffee on your tables. I got coffee this morning, right? The water now, but I had the coffee earlier. Everybody reacts different to coffee, right? You have your own level of tolerance with that. I cannot drink coffee after like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or I won't sleep at night. Coffee blocks the production of adenosine, so it makes you it delays sleepiness, which makes you feel more awake and alert. My partner can drink a cup of coffee in bed and fall asleep, right? Like if I did that, I would never sleep. Like I'd be up for the whole night, just like twitching, right? Everybody reacts differently to everything. Some people one alcoholic drink and they're passed out. Others can drink way too much and like not have any reaction. So it's unpredictable. These substances are very, very unpredictable. I can't take NyQuil. Random thing about me, just, I don't know why I'm sharing that with you, but I can't take NyQuil. I hallucinate and like sleepwalk and wander the house lost. NyQuil, right? It's like the mildest drug and I can't take it. Neither can my daughter. She starts to sleepwalk when she takes nighttime cough medicine. And it's so strange. We all just have different chemistry that causes us to react in unpredictable ways to substances. And sometimes we learn that through trial and error. And sometimes we can kind of learn that the hard way too. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very much the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, and everybody has different reactions. So it's interesting. Sometimes people who have, and I don't know if this is true of you or not, but sometimes people who have ADHD can drink coffee and it actually has the calming effect. And it helps them to sleep. It helps them to be grounded and calm down. Versus other people drink coffee and they're up and they have lots of energy and they're ready to go. It's wild. Just something as benign as coffee has such different reactions from person to person. Yeah. Yeah. Right. My nephew has ADHD. He drinks a cup of coffee every day before college, before his classes, to help him calm down and focus. It's so counterintuitive. Someone who's overstimulated drinks coffee to help calm down, right? But it's actually helpful oftentimes for ADHD. Yeah. Yeah. Adderall is a stimulant. And so is Ritalin, right? They're both stimulants. It's actually thought that people who have ADHD are understimulated. And so by like stimulating them, you help them to calm down. It's really kind of counterintuitive, but it works really well. So two things up here, two different things. There's intoxication and then there is a disorder. Okay, when you use a substance and you become intoxicated, right, that is a cluster of temporary behavioral or psychological changes. So you drink alcohol and you're a little more uninhibited and like kind of out of it. And like, you have these temporary things that happen that go away when the substance wears off, right? You smoke marijuana and you're relaxed and mellow, or maybe like seeing things or whatever it might be, right? And then it goes away after that substance is faded out of your system. That is an intoxication. It's temporary. And a lot of people engage in like temporary use of substances. What we're more interested in for us is a substance use disorder. So when people have a substance use disorder, they have a problematic pattern of drug use, right? So they have kind of this issue with a drug. They're addicted to it. They're dependent on it. They crave it. They want it. A lot of different criteria that we'll talk about in a moment. But it combines. In the past, we used to have two different disorders. You could be dependent or abusive on a substance. And it was kind of a silly designation because most people had both. And so in the DSM-5, they combined them, right? So if somebody has an issue with a drug, they have a substance use disorder. And then we specify the drug. So we'd say substance use disorder, heroin, substance use disorder, marijuana, right? And the idea here is that you have a problematic pattern with that drug, and then you have a whole host of symptoms related to the use of it. I have a little video that kind of introduces this a little bit, and I'll play it for you. Not the most thrilling thing, but I think it's helpful in kind of seeing some of these patterns and talking about the criteria a little bit. then I'll put action in, right? I'm kind of showing some of those signs and symptoms, which obviously we'll talk about a little bit more. But when people have a substance use disorder, again, it can be more than one substance, but we typically specify which one or which ones. And there's a whole host of symptoms that you can have, and this isn't something that's short term. So people have 2 or more symptoms for at least 12 months. Okay, so 2 or more of a whole bunch of these lasting for at least 12 months. So this is a long-term problematic pattern. Was that okay, just check. So they start taking more and more of the drug than they intended is one of them. So they take larger amounts over time. So more and more than they intend to take. All right, so you're starting out kind of small, but it increases over time, right? And it's, again, more than you maybe intended or would like to be consuming. You have persistent, unsuccessful efforts to reduce, right? So you can say unsuccessful efforts to reduce the use of the substance. So despite the fact that you want to cut down, you're unsuccessful in your efforts to do. So oftentimes people will try to stop, but because they're addicted to the substance, it's very difficult to do. So kind of a persistent, unsuccessful effort to reduce the amount of the substance that you're taking. There's an excessive amount of time spent related to the drug. So this could be time using it, time acquiring it, time thinking about it, recovering from it. There's just a lot of time and energy revolving around the substance. So maybe you spend a lot of time trying to get it, trying to use it, trying to recover from it, thinking about it, craving it, and so on. It takes up a lot of time and energy in your life. You have a failure to fulfill major obligations. It starts to affect your life in some way, right? You're not able to go to school in the morning because you're so hungover, right? You are high, and so you have to call in sick to work, right? It's starting to affect your ability to fulfill the obligations in your life. It's interfering with your life and causing you to not be able to meet the things that are required of you. You have continued use despite problems. Despite the fact that it's causing you issues, right? Whether that's the time or money or failing to fulfill your obligations and so on, you continue to use it, right? Again, you're unable to stop. Unsuccessful efforts to cut down or stop. It causes you to stop doing things that you used to enjoy doing. So we could say a reduction in activities that you enjoy. Right, so you stop doing the things that you enjoy doing because the drug has taken over that time, right? So maybe you used to really love going out and hanging out with friends, but instead of doing that, you're sitting at home and using the substance, right? So it starts to cause you to reduce important or like fun activities, things you enjoy because of that substance use. It puts you in situations that are physically hazardous. So maybe you're driving under the influence, which would be very dangerous, right? Physically hazardous situations as a result. Maybe you're using questionable like needles or products because you're so addicted to the drug, you'll take whatever, right? It's putting you in situations that are hazardous or potentially dangerous for you. Let's see, what else can I add on here? Tolerance and withdrawal are big ones, which I have up here. So tolerance and withdrawal. Tolerance is when you need more and more of a drug to get the same effect, right? So if you drink a cup of coffee every single day, eventually your body gets so used to that cup of coffee that it becomes the norm. And in order to feel a buzz or like any kind of alertness from coffee, you actually have to drink a bigger cup or a second cup, right? It's the same idea with any substance, right? You used to get high from like one dose and now you need two, right? And it's very common with substances, right? That people have that effect. When I started working at Starbucks when I was in college, like I mentioned, I remember the interview, they asked me, what do you like about coffee? Right, like I was trying to get the job and I hated coffee. I didn't grow up drinking coffee. I thought it tasted awful. It was before I discovered caramel in coffee, which is just delicious, right? But I gave him a great answer about how like coffee was like the great social facilitator and people like met over coffee, fall in love over coffee, whatever. I got hired. But I remember the first week they had me sample all these coffees, right? So that I could describe them to people. And just that tiny little sample cup. And I was like buzzed out of my mind because I didn't drink coffee. I literally did not grow up drinking it. So my first cup of coffee came at like 19, right? And that tiny little sample cup, I was like, I'll go clean the bathroom. What do you want me to do? I could work another shift. I was like a million miles an hour because I had so much energy from this like shot of coffee. And I remember our manager would always try and motivate us. We'd do shot competitions, espresso shot competitions, I should clarify, in the morning to get us like going and to wake up. And I remember in the beginning, I could take one shot of espresso and I felt like I was going to throw up. By the time I left Starbucks, years and years later, I could do like 6 shots of espresso and not even blink, right? I became tolerant to it, right? That little like tiny cup did nothing. So I moved to the short and then the tall, then the grande, then the venti. We didn't have the Trinta at the time, but you start going up. I could see this in customers too. They'd start off with a grande and then it was a triple grande and then a quad grande and then a venti and then a quad venti, right? You're just adding more and more shots of espresso because it stops working, right? And so people take more and more and more of a drug in order to get that same effect. And then when I quit Starbucks, I had withdrawal because I couldn't afford it anymore, right? Like a quad venti something that's expensive when you're like in college, right? And so having those symptoms of not feeling so great. This is something that maintains substance use. When people feel lousy, when they quit using the drug, it makes them want to keep using it so that they don't experience that negative like feeling in their body. The last thing I can add up here is there's a lot of craving or a strong desire to use the drug, right? So you're thinking about it, you're craving it, you're wanting it. That craving is kind of the addictive piece, right? You think about it, how can I get it, right? And that's very, very common with substance use disorders. Right? So these are some of the big things that people are experiencing. And again, none of them are short term. 12 months, so we're talking about a year where people are having this problematic pattern with the substance or maybe even multiple substances. I have a little case study that I want to give you. So if you could get into groups of like, let's say like 2 to 4 people, whatever's easy and convenient around you. And then I have enough for you each to have one, but you only need to turn in one per group. But if you each want one to read, so you don't have to read it out loud, totally fine, I have plenty. So once you have a group, send one person up to get copies for each of you, but only write your names on one of them that you're going to turn in. And I want you to read the case study. It's about a young woman struggling with ecstasy. And then I only want you to do number 1 for now. Okay, so as a group, read the case study and do just number 1. So as soon as you have like 2 to 4 people, come grab some copies, go ahead and get started, but only do number 1 for now. And again, I have plenty if you each want your own, that's totally fine. Now, so read through it, feel free to mark it up and then do number 1 together. When you're done reading it as a group, feel free to write bullets. You don't have to write out sentences, but you could just list some things for number one. Try to get a good list for number one and do number one for one.
Or that's what I'm doing. My sleep shakes. Yeah, that. I can still. Happens, oh yeah, so 6 years ago.
Okay, and I guess something physically.
So just a couple more minutes and we'll talk about it together.
And so I realized up here, like it was disappointing. It was very hard to learn. Because they're not yourselves usually. I'm sorry, I thought it was. Yeah.
It's hard to bring people right and say, let's make this fair and it's that.
Well, there's. I think a lot of people there. Yeah, there's so many. But I think having is very interesting. Sometimes, but I'm watching.
Yeah. Yeah, well, which training is one?
Yeah, I don't know. It's freezing. Whoever has been needed.
Stepping on. You're getting my scratch.
It's totally fine.
And so a lot of you look like you're, let's talk about, a lot of you look like you're done. If you are still kind of jogging stuff down, that's totally fine. But in the interest of time, what are some of the things that she has going on that might indicate that she has a substance use problem with ecstasy? Give me one, yeah. Yeah, okay, everyone ready? Right, so we have an increase, right, in use or like tolerance. She definitely is showing tolerance, she's using more and more. What else do we have? Yeah.
Stop like acting and doing these,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, like it causes her to stop doing the things she enjoys doing, for sure, yeah.
Revolved around a bit, like all
Yeah.
of her friends, her boyfriends, like all of her hobbies, like her exercises and stuff like that. They're like surrounded by it. It's just a.
Yeah, right, lots of time, everything related to lots of energy with it, yeah.
She only worked to pay or like sustain herself for drugs.
Right.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, you can say that definitely shows a lot where her motivation is, right? It's her whole life at the moment, yeah.
Pretty rough.
Yeah, a lot of withdrawals, right? Withdrawals and tolerance, you definitely see those things. I slipped in the 13 months. I added that into the case study, right? So we established timing. Anything else we want to say? Any other things that you wrote down? I have like one or two more that I wrote down on here. Anything else? A lot of craving for the drug, right? She definitely thinking about craving it often. Did you have a thought? Did I steal it? Yeah. Yeah, it's causing her harm, right? It's affecting her sleep, her well-being, right? It's pretty obvious reading through this, right, that it's taking a toll on her. There's a lot of things related to the substance. It's a long period of time. We'll get to the causes and treatments in just a moment. Just a few other thoughts. Something I want to mention, synergistic effects. Synergy is a term that means when things work together to create something bigger than they would on their own. Okay, so oftentimes we talk about group work having the potential for synergy, that a group of people by themselves could accomplish less than a group of people together, right? Which may or may not be true depending on the group, right? But synergy is when two things interact with each other to create a greater effect. And when you combine substances together, you get synergistic effects. And this can be incredibly dangerous. And there's a lot of very popular combinations of drugs like Red Bull and vodka, or like Jaeger and like Monster, right? There's all these different like things where you combine them together to get an unpredictable effect. But when people are using multiple substances, they act on each other in very unpredictable ways. And there have been an incredible number of people who have met a tragic end. I just put a few up here, like tragic end from combining substances, both legal and illegal, right? People who overdosed on medications or overdosed on drugs, or maybe even like committed suicide by combining them together. So many people, this is just, again, just a few, there are just countless of people who have combined substances together and they act in unpredictable ways. Even prescription medications can do this, right? Very benign things can interact together to create unpredictable outcomes. So just something to be aware of when you're combining substances, as often becomes the case with people who are abusing drugs, it can be incredibly dangerous, right? A lot of interesting documentaries, or like films, I should say, about musicians that came out in the last year or two. Right, with like the movie about Elvis and the movie about like Elton John, and like just I've watched all of these in the last like year, all these people using unpredictable substances causing, you know, bad outcomes in the end. Yeah.
Even antidepressants.
Yeah.
Like regular medications can cause problems like.
Yep.
I was told by my psychiatrist that I can't take ibuprofen.
Yeah.
I can only take acetaminophen
Yeah.
for pain.
Right.
Otherwise, we cause some kind of gluten,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I don't know why.
Yeah. But they interact with each other in a way that causes problems, right?
That's just that's pretty benign.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I share with you in this class about the serotonin syndrome? Like, yeah, right. Like, I had no idea that I couldn't take a specific type of cough syrup, right, with a medication I was on. They interacted together and I ended up in the hospital. Like, it was wild just from cough syrup. Like I told you, I don't do great with cough syrup, but it was just a normal like Delcium cough syrup, and they interacted in an unpredictable way. Like even like mild, like you said, like Advil and stuff like that, right? Like they can cause problems. And when you combine harder drugs together or lots of prescription drugs, it can be deadly, right? And there have been a lot of cases of that happening, tragic endings for people. Some causes. And then we'll look at her causes quickly. A lot of overlap with eating disorders, very multi-dimensional here. People can have powerful dependency needs back to childhood, stressful socioeconomic conditions, environmental conditions can be a big part of substance abuse. And you see a lot of that in our individual here, which we'll look at in a second. A lot of conditioning, right? You take a drug and you have a positive experience, it's rewarding and it makes you want to take it again. Right, you get that rush of euphoria or rush of being relaxed or calm, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, that's what I wanted, and it becomes reinforced, and you do it again and again. And then biologically, sometimes people have like a deficiency in the way that they respond to things. Right, their reward center in their brain, they can have a reward deficiency syndrome, where what can happen is you don't get that natural rush that maybe other people would get from a common behavior. And so you start taking drugs or medications to get that rush that other people might get naturally. And again, you can become very dependent. Drugs can change the wiring in your brain long term if you're abusing them. Yeah.
Are these genetic?
It can be, right? Substance abuse is something that has a genetic component to it for sure. And so that'd be down here in like the biology. It can. Yeah, especially the the deficiency, that like reward center dopamine deficiency. So with your group, take just like 2 minutes. What are some of the things in the case study? Number 2, what are some of her possible contributors? There's definitely a few. See if you can get a few of them written down. Take a couple of minutes.
That's the biggest one.
Yeah. But like 5 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. We should.
And in the interest of time, if you are done, go ahead and work on number 3, just so that we just have a little bit of time to talk about it.
I would say. But that's. I was thinking. So yeah.
Like, if it's just like another minute or so, and then we'll talk about it quickly. All right, so in the interest of time, let's just wrap it up together, and we can keep writing if we're still writing thoughts. So we kind of got a little short on time at the end. But some of the things, you know, where she talks a lot about like the environment and the peer pressure and her friends and her boyfriend, right? Like somebody said earlier, she's surrounded by this, right? And so that environmental stuff, and then doing drugs to fit in, that rush and feeling that she gets is very much an example of that operant conditioning, right? That like positive euphoric feeling she's chasing, right? She wants to have that again. Then I added in there that they were all like broken in some way, right? They all had like underlying problems that might have been contributing. And those are things that are oftentimes, we have to go back and address them, like figure out what's fueling it. It's always tricky with substance disorders. It's kind of like that chicken or the egg thing. Like, you know, did the substance abuse disorder cause anxiety and depression, or did the depression and anxiety cause substance abuse? But and that's something that we oftentimes have to figure out in order to have adequate treatment. And then in terms of treatment stuff, right, there's a few things here. And so obviously look over these last couple of slides a little bit more, but we do like behavioral therapies, right, where we get people to get sick from the substance, right? So you can take another drug that will make you sick when you drink alcohol. And so you're trying to condition yourself to not take it. Easy fix. Sometimes people just don't take the drug when they're going to drink. And that's a problem that can happen with this. But a lot of behavioral therapies, like monitoring your use, journaling, who are the people around you, like, and for her, the people around her are a big issue. Detoxing is a big one, right? So getting you off of it, right? She ends up in a hospital, psychiatric ward for 14 days, getting yourself off of that drug, detoxing from it, getting it out of your system. And then sometimes people do things like residential treatment centers and AA. She takes some medication, right, to help with like underlying issues that she had going on. There's a lot of different treatments. And again, just kind of like the causes, the more you can combine together, the more successful we tend to be. So a really quick reminder, don't forget that the diagnosis paper is due by tonight. If you don't get it in by tonight, you can email it to me late. Late is better than not at all. But try and get it in before the deadline. And then remember, I won't see you Thursday because we have exam number 2. So just make sure you take that at some point on Thursday. I will be here on campus, but we just won't have a class. So when you leave today, make sure you turn in your sheet with all of your names on it so I can give you credit for that. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Good luck on the exam. And I'll see you in November. I'll see you next week. Happy Halloween, right? Oh my gosh, I'm not ready.